Hey, welcome back to American Zarathustra, episode 51. Our guest today is someone I first met on the White Art Collective karaoke. Her rendition of Eye of the Tiger left me speechless. So I'm very happy to have her back. She has a unique voice, a refreshing voice. She brings a lot of humor and energy to the white positive sphere. She's boldly carved out her own niche. And so we're really, really pleased to have her. One thing I want to talk about today is her show, Discordant Dragons. This brings a humorous spin to the news reaction show genre. And so we want to say, she's a great friend of the No White Guilt Sphere and the White Art Collective channel. The Imperium Art Show welcomes you. Hello, Yizz. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine, Donald. Struggling with life stuff like all of us in these trying times, but I'm thankful to have wonderful friends like you, and I'm very thankful that you're willing to have me on here for us to have a conversation tonight. Thank you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, yes. And I'm always happy to welcome back my good friend and co-host Nullis of abnormocracy.com. How are you?
Hello, Donald. Hello, Yizz, and hello to the audience.
Brilliant. So there's a lot going on. Let's maybe start off with just basic introductions. Every show we do is a kind of a part of the total documentary of Imperium art, giving voice to the creators and the influencers in the white positive sphere. So if you could kind of give just a quick overview for people who don't know you, Yizz, and we'll put your link tree underneath the video at the end as well.
Sure. My link tree will get you to all of my social media and all the sites where I host streams and upload my content. I don't put much on YouTube anymore because I got so heavily censored this year. I had a bunch of videos removed. I got a couple of strikes, and they actually started going into the descriptions of my videos to remove hashtags and remove certain words. And I had about 40 videos that had the tag anti-white and anti-whiteism removed, and they went into the description and just erased those words out as well. So I was like, you know what? I think it's time for me to stop using YouTube as my main platform. So I use Odyssey now as my main. And that's, of course, on my link tree, which I just put in the chat. You guys can go there. But as far as who I am and what I do, several years ago, about 3 years ago, I was frustrated. I was at a dark place. Things in my life fell apart. My social life was over. My mother and her husband were not doing well. My husband's mother was not doing well. She's passed on now at this point. And I was basically being attacked by the vicious anti-whites, and my social life and private life was disintegrating in the unfortunate, awful city I was in. I was in a very large city in the Southwest, near the West Coast in America. And I have now retreated back to where I belong, which is in rural Appalachia on the border of Tennessee and Virginia. Yep. And in pursuit of trying to not go crazy and make things make sense, I started a public voice under the tag of Yizz the Eunuch. And I chose the term eunuch because a eunuch has worn many hats across the last many thousand years of civilization. And I am a very unique kind of person. I'm intersex. It is not unfair to use a term like trans for me, but I avoid that word because of how cancerous it is. I'm an intersex person. I'm an intersex male XXY. I used to be called I think I'm the 11th or 12th type of intersex on the list. They might have changed it by now. It used to be called gonadular hermaphroditism, and now it's just called ovotestes, which is where you have a gonadular condition where you don't have proper ovaries or testes, and you don't have proper genital formulation in utero, and that leads to all kinds of developmental issues and gender problems in your teens, which I went through most of those, and it was hell. It was like I was going through menopause and dosing testosterone like one of those bodybuilders all at the same time in my teens. It was a crazy wild ride. And since I had to have those organs removed, I decided to claim that title of eunuch and wear my oddities as a badge, because so many of the unfortunate misled people of the anti-white cluster of LGBT or feminism or intersectionalism or all that, so many of them unfortunately wear their mark, wear their pronouns, wear their mental disabilities on their sleeve. And I think that is to their detriment. But I did get the idea from them, and I said, I'm going to take that negative and I'm going to make it a positive, and I'm going to make a public persona around it. Because if you look in history, eunuchs have been many things. They've been a mix of untoward things that we won't mention for pleasant company, but they've also served many roles of companionship, camaraderie, counseling, helping administer estates and things. And I thought that would be a very interesting, unique spin to sort of create a public persona around, because I can't be a man. I can't be a great man. Even though I do have male genetics, I can't be a man. And we lack strong, wise men who lead us. And I thought, well, you know what? Eunuchs in history, they have advised and played second fiddle to some of the greatest men that have ever lived. Maybe I could do that with my public voice, while also finding a way to have some kind of peace and sort out all the crazy ideas in this wild clown world that we're a part of. So that's what led me to being a public voice, because I'd already discovered, this was about 3.5 years ago, I'd already discovered all the media lies, anti-whiteism. I didn't know what to call it yet. I discovered that Western and white guilt was at the core of a lot of the problems that I was facing in my life, and all of the consternations I was having trying to make a difference in life, with everything from political stuff to activism to volunteer work in the city I lived in. There was so much anti-white bigotry and anti-white hatred literally baked into the ideas that everyone had. Yeah. And I knew that was false, because where I grew up here in rural Appalachia, it might as well have been 1920. Everybody where I grew up hated the government. They didn't like World War II. They didn't like sending their loved ones off to die for the wars of the rich people. Right. And the people I grew up around, they didn't, name the J or whatever. They weren't like that. Yeah. But they did name the globalists. They named Wall Street. They named the fat cats in Washington. So I grew up sort of already thinking along the same lines of, hey, there's a serious agenda against us, and it's been going on since before even my grandparents were born, type of thing. Wow. And I just assumed when I moved away to get medical help and to try to pursue a career and stuff like that, I didn't realize what a time warp was going to happen to me when I started moving away from my rural area. And boy, howdy, let me tell you, things are a lot different when you start going to places like DC and New York and New Jersey and going down to Southern California and into these bigger cities. Like, it was like I leaped ahead 50 or 60 years into some kind of dystopian hell that I had only read about in science fiction and seen in comic books growing up. Yeah. And oh my goodness, it was quite the culture shock. But regardless, to sort of tie that all into where I am now, I am a person who, I understand that we are a product of Lysenkoism and bioleninism, and there's a natural kind of decay to degeneracy of any successful empire and great people when they become when they seek catharsis and hedonism and forget their gods. There's also an active agenda to want to weaken us, to want to flood our children's minds full of porn and hedonism and drugs and all this other nonsense. So I realize all of that stuff, and I realize that me being drawn into the LGBT cluster because of my biology and the frustrations I had with my developmental years, I have a lot of that stink of modern degeneracy on me, but I didn't want to let it crush me. I wanted to turn that negative into a positive, because I had, thankfully, even though my father was a bit abusive and he was mostly a prick, he was still a good father in a lot of ways. And I also had good training and education. I got involved between the years of 7 and 20 with a local retired Green Beret Spec Ops guy from Vietnam. He had friends from all over the world. Okay, hold your laughter till the end. He had a friend that was in Mossad. He had friends in the government. And he was friends with people who traveled and did combat training for military groups around the world, including, Israel and South Korea and Japan and all the places that the United States military touches. And he had a little martial arts school near where I grew up. And so I just sort of naturally started going there like a lot of the kids, but I really loved it and took it to heart. And he could tell that I was, a gender bent little weirdo, and he wanted to take me under his wing and teach me to be strong to compensate for the weaknesses I had. And part of that training I got was identifying weaknesses within yourself and those around you, like soldiers that you fight with, knowing their weaknesses and turning those into a strength, or at least channeling the negativity and the problems of that weakness towards some positive bent. And so that's what I've done in the last 4 years with my voice and my platform, is I want to bring everyone together that cares about Western civilization, that cares about having a future, that doesn't want their ethnicity and their religion and their race to be just ground to powder underneath this globalist corporate machine. And I want people to realize their ethnicity matters, their genetics matter, their spirituality matters, and no one should take these from us. This is a divine right that all humans have. And I think that there are a lot of voices out there that think this and believe this. And so I try to get everyone out of their clusters, whether they're a disaffected liberal, whether they're from somewhere, maybe they're from a right-wing libertarian standpoint. Maybe they're part of the Mises community. Maybe they're a former white nationalist, like a lot of my friends are from this area. I want them to come together and share ideas and look past things that our enemies want us to be distracted by. Republican versus Democrat, degenerate versus traditional, atheist or pagan versus Christian, and all this other infighting. I want people of all types to look past that and look towards something bigger, because there's bigger things afoot than our petty squabblings over economics or who's more degenerate than who, or how much weed is okay before you're not allowed to sit at the table. Like all these different little conversations that pepper the nationalist squad and the libertarian squad and the white identity squads and things that I've met. I want to get everyone together and thrusting all of our ideas together and realizing we are more alike than we are different, because we need ethnic and racial unity and solidarity. And every people around the world need that right now, not just the whites, all of us do. And I think that is a message that will resonate not just with our people, but anyone else who happens to listen in. And so that's why I try to make what I say wholesome, holistic, and inviting, even though I don't lie about racial and ethnic differences or genetic variance or IQ. I don't want to, at the same time, throw anyone under the bus by using ugly language or acting like I just dismiss someone who doesn't happen to be of European heritage. So hopefully now you understand a little bit of the background and the why behind why I do what I do and put my time and effort and mind out to the public in the way that I do.
Hence the title of this episode, Yizz the Unifier. I am extremely impressed with your energy, your vision, and honestly, your heroic journey that you've gone through, going pretty much from hell to an elevated state. And not only that, there's, Yizz the unique in the sense that you're unique among others. Truly.
That's sweet. Thank you.
I mean that in the best sense of the word. You're unique in the sense that there's no one that I know of in our sort of socio-political sphere that has the kind of the gender angle that you do. And you would be the perfect kind of, entry point for people who do have, say, gender dysphoria, or people in the LGBT community that see the insanity of it.
And one of the things that I can tell you right off, I hate to interrupt you, but of the hundreds of people that still talk to me and I associate with who happen to be some kind of intersex or trans or queer or however they identify, there are people my age and older that either are unabashedly what we might call degenerate, like they're openly gay and have a gay husband or something, but they see the same truths that we do emergent. I'm not going to name who they are because I don't want to cause them problems or dox them. But there are people that I know in our communities, names of men and women that you guys might know and associate with, that have reached out to me privately to let me know that they're either bisexual or gay, and they're glad that I'm willing to be that lightning rod and talk about these things openly, because it's a very unpleasant thing that a lot of us in this sort of Western awakening, Western sunrise cluster, we don't want that stink of degeneracy on us. So I'm glad to be that lightning rod, because I feel like I have, ironically, I have the stones to deal with that kind of heat. And I feel like I have the intelligence, the experience, and the wisdom to holistically speak on those variances while not accepting or tolerating what I consider to be negative hedonistic degeneracy. So I do my best to tread that line wisely and cautiously, while not allowing the pause or using tolerance as a negative, but also showing that there are people that can have an arc of redemption that may have been involved in drugs or prostitution or gay stuff in the past, but they realize, hey, wait, this is cancer. I need to move away from this, and I want to talk about it to encourage other young people who might be of my persuasion or something like me from also going down these bad paths. So that's one of the things that I want to do with my experience as well, is I want young people who might have gender issues or have some type of glandular or brain or hormone problem that these transgender activist jackals are going to want to try to subvert like they tried with me. Sure. I want them to hear my voice. I want them to know there's someone out there that they can listen to that has morality and cares about race and ethnicity and culture and tradition, but also is not going to just call them a degenerate and shoot them in the head. Like I feel like there needs to be that voice out there, and hopefully that's going to make a difference. And that's one of the things that I also want to do with my my little crusade that I'm on.
You've got your work cut out for you. That's amazing. I didn't know you had any background in the martial arts. I'm quite that's like new to me. So yeah, as a lot of people know, I teach kung fu and such. I'm curious, what system did you study?
It was called the Fire and Water System of Empty Hand Martial Combat. It's led by David Collins. He's in his 70s now. He's retired. He had a bout of cancer in the 90s that sort of made him look towards retirement. But the Fire and Water System of Empty Hand Combat was pretty legendary for a while for being one of the best empty hand physical combat schools, because they trained, it was primarily Kung Fu, Aikido, Judo, and American boxing and kickboxing. Wow. And they taught us from a very young age different types of applied kung fu, like Bruce Lee's Wing Chun, or Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, which is based on White Crane Wing Chun. They taught us Li Fu, Li Hao, all the 5 animals, monkey, mantis, and all that. Wonderful. And while at the same time, they also taught us to use more modern military combat stuff to defend against weapons, how to subdue without having to kill or maim. And also, we just learned to beat the Christ out of each other. We would put on the headgear and the boxing gloves, and we would just go full on Hong Kong on each other in the ring, just punching and kicking and biting and headbutting and elbowing and just beating the shit out of each other every week. And it's good training, because when you have really good martial arts internal stuff and you practice all the movements and the flow, but then you also train like a boxer and beat the crap out of each other, it gives you good strength of character and a sort of a well-rounded approach to physical prowess. And I'm glad I had that 13 or 14 years of experience. It really made me hard in spiritual ways that I don't think I would have gotten otherwise.
Well, that's an excellent sort of advertisement for martial arts for our community. We really, I promote that as much as I can, and so I'm so happy that you have a voice in that as well. Let me just quickly pass the mic to my buddy Nullis here. Let him chime in a bit.
Well, before I say anything, I'm going to ask this question: Imperium Kumite, when?
You're getting a little old, but I would scrap a little with some of you guys. Just
I love it. We'll have to have like our own sort of school, someday. We'll have to pull it. I
ain't gonna put on the 18 ounces and go full contact with a 20-year-old, but I still love to spar, and I play grab ass and horse around. We still have the practice shinaya, the kendo practice swords. Me and my husband have those, and we beat on each other sometimes just for fun. But I like roughhousing and doing sparring and stuff, but no more full contact for me. I'm in my 40s. I can't be doing that no more.
So, wow. I mean, to all of this, the only thing I would add is this theme of redemption. Mm-hmm. Redemption is a very complex topic. So, I have a very set, anyone who listens to this show regularly is aware that I have a very a clear-cut set moral value system. Not that I am always perfect, and not that I always live up to my own expectations. So, we have to be very realistic about who we are and what our goals are, right? So we have to make sure that those are very clear.
My mentor told me you're going to fail, but what makes the difference between a successful man and a weak man is how well you deal with that failure and what you do when you fall down. That's
exactly it. And so we need to understand that, we have through our value system, we have a very clear understanding. Some of us, not everyone, some of us might have a very clear understanding of where we believe this demise happened to our, let's call it to Western kind, to all of European people of European descent, no matter where they are. Mm-hmm. There are certain elements there that have led us to this outcome. So I think that a part of this redemption arc for anyone, and I always say and stress that we should always leave the door open because there are a lot of people out there who are very lonely, who are also lost in a way and don't know where they can turn to, and sometimes then they turn to degeneracy because they find no place in the community of the European man, and I understand that to a degree. At the same time, I also say that, you can't really you can't cross the door. You can't open the door unless you go through a redemption arc yourself. You have to, and a redemption arc is what, right? A long time ago, I wrote this quote where I said, redemption isn't beautiful. Redemption isn't easy. There are no singular moments of epiphany that lead to perfect salvation.
Right.
Redemption perpetually pushes you to move beyond nihilism's false cocoon. Redemption is a brutal, ugly bastard. Redemption is truth. And so we have to understand that it doesn't matter if everyone around you forgives you. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you can forgive yourself, and that you, by forgiving yourself, you understand the error of your ways, and then you can move on. So without any of this happening, right, this is what I see a lot of times happen in our society. And I'm not even talking about our spheres. I'm just generally speaking. We say, oh, you're forgiven, everything is fine. Well, no, it's not fine, because you have to forgive yourself. Otherwise, you're going to continue to persist and continue to do the same mistakes that you've been doing up until now. So this is not an easy path, but it's a necessary path. And I think that a lot of people, we should keep the doors open for people. But at the same time, we have to have standards. And I applaud you for the way you're approaching this, because you do say, we have to have standards. We can't just say, anyone and everyone is welcome. We have to really, set some high standards that are greater than us. And I think that that's an important point.
Like the few LGBT people, and to use that term loosely, they don't identify that way, neither do I. But the few people who are of that umbrella, so to speak, that I associate with, and the few that I've talked to on that I've given public voice to, that I've associated with, my minimum requirement for even speaking to someone is they have to publicly denounce LGBT stuff. They have to not identify as any of those cancerous words or labels. They have to not actively participate in anything that I consider to be part of the harmful structure of what this degeneracy has become. Like, no going to drag shows, no promoting clubs, no doing, sex parties, no crazy polyamorous nonsense and all that. Like, that's my bar, because if I'm going to associate with someone who is like me and came from a background of this kind of unfortunate bioleninistic degeneracy, I don't want to just open the door and let in the riffraff. I want to only associate with people who have made the discoveries and gotten to the arc where I am, coming through all of that crap and saying, hey, I don't want this garbage on me anymore, so I'm not going to wear it as a uniform. I'm not going to participate in it. Sort of like I wouldn't invite someone who I know is a heroin addict to a what do they call the meetings that's like AA but for heroin? There's a word for that, I don't remember. But we'll use alcohol then, since I know AA. Like, I wouldn't invite someone who I know is a drunkard and unabashedly still drinks a lot to an AA meeting if I'm trying to get clean. So by the same token, people who I know that happen to be of this persuasion, if I know they're still actively promoting things that I think are damning, then I don't want to associate with them either. So it's kind of like a I guess degenerate gatekeeping. I don't know. But you get what I'm saying with it. Like, I only want to give people a voice and bring them into this cluster to have discussions when they have demonstrably proven, or at least to me, that I think that they're headed in the right direction and their heart and mind is in the right place to actually contribute to something positive.
Yeah, and I think the word here should apply to everyone, not just to any particular group. And I think that the term here is lust. So you can have lust for life, obviously, and you should have lust for life, but you shouldn't let your lust dominate you, and you shouldn't let, whatever it is, whether it's a career, whether it's money, whether it's some kind of physical, it could be food, it could be anything. So whatever that is that drives your lust, you have to learn to master that and not let that master you. And also, I don't think lust is an identity. So, to anyone, who might have certain, in their own lives, whatever it is, again, it could be anything. It could be money, it could be food, it could be women, it could be whatever it is, right? And the thing, what I'm trying to say with that is that, you don't identify. Your identity is not defined by your lust.
Right. It would be like a regular straight dude identifying as titties. Or beer. It's like, that's stupid. I mean, like, why would you do that?
Well, I'm just kidding. But no, you're right. Yeah, and I think that you really have to. There's a lot of wisdom in our ancestors, and all we have to do is just go back and just read what they wrote about all of these things. And again, just control, be the master of your own life. That's really what it is.
This is beautiful stuff to hear about all this. I think in a funny kind of way, people who are given these types of challenges, like you have your unique challenges, I have mine, we all kind of do. And if we take that and turn that into a strength, that really is exemplary. That is the hero's journey. And you're doing it, you're living it. And so it's...
and I hope to inspire others to do the same with whatever their weakness or crutch happens to be.
So a lot of the questions that we routinely go through with our guests about how they came to their awakening and the challenges, we've kind of, you covered a lot of that. So actually, I think it would be good to kind of segue more into the topic of unification. And what are your methods and challenges that you've seen in trying to reach out to all these adjacent spheres? This is a really hot topic among our friends, say, in the No White Guilt sphere and the White Art Collective sphere and all the local spheres here. Everyone who cares about white identity and the future of Western civilization, unfortunately, there's so much atomization and ghettoization almost. There's this tendency almost towards like echo chambers of our own ideas and infighting, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a big issue in our cause. And so I think since you're actively working on it, let us know what are maybe some stories or things you could share that, showed your success or challenges you overcame.
Certainly. Let me talk about the primary clusters or ghettos, so to speak, to use that word, that I have come from and that I associate with now trying to get people together. I have always been of the sort of lower right quadrant libertarian type of thing. When I was younger, I mistakenly thought, because of course, before I started to escape all of this 5 or 6 years ago, I still, I was still of the mindset of, okay, left versus right, Democrat versus Republican, everything we can talk about has to be in this veneer. So, going back, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I thought the things I wanted were left leaning. I didn't realize I was wrong at the time, but I didn't really care. I wasn't really politically active. I cared more about healthcare, building society, trying to help cultural and technological advancement, because I know that the word progressive has been forever damned and poisoned now. But like in my mind, I grew up reading science fiction, cyberpunk, space stories. My favorite movie as a kid was 2001: Space Odyssey. Like, I wanted to be a part of helping advance society, to not because of some silly progressive thing of, every man needs to wear a dress before we're progressive, nothing like that. Sure. But like my idea of progress was we need to move beyond killing each other over resources. I want all of the world to care about creating a Dyson sphere and making spaceships that could go harvest space ice and let us civilize other worlds and shit. Like, that's what I cared about. And so I didn't really give a crap about politics and all that. I always thought it was just idiots, smelling their own farts and morons being weaponized against each other, because that's what my grandfather, he was a draft dodger and he didn't want to go to no Korean War. And so he said, he always told me, the stupidest thing you can do is go let a government get you killed to make somebody rich in Wall Street. Right. And that's what my grandfather said. He was a really based dude. And I am more like him than anyone else in my family. And I sort of took that with me when I left my little mountain area and went out to the rest of America. And trust me, I'm getting somewhere with this. So the people that I met along the way were, of course, Democrat type people, liberal type people, libertarian type people, people who were the atheist skeptic crew that cared about advancement and leaving behind what they considered to be primitive things like Christianity. I don't sympathize with that, by the way. I think that it is necessary to recognize the divine order and the natural order. And I think that religious folks often get that more right than the atheist group, but that's an argument for a different time. But it led me to being a part of different camps and never really being heavily grounded in any of them. And so starting around the second term of Obama in like 2012, 2013 is when I really started noticing the world that I thought I lived in was not real. Things were changing and happening. People's moods and language was changing. What I was seeing on the television and on regular news sites, like everything from Fox News to New York Times and all the usual mainstream sources that, I thought that was enough back in the day, like everybody. I wasn't broken free of all that yet. And so I started trying to make sense of all that inside what Jason calls the anti-white narrative, inside what I call state propaganda, or the military-industrial complex propaganda machine, whatever you want to call it. I didn't start leaving that until around 2014, 2015. And along the way, I became part of many groups, Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin's liberalist group. I became part of the MAGA community. I became part of Mises libertarian crew, not like by name, but I started associating with those people because I liked a lot of what they had to say about economics and breaking down the state. And look, we need to do something about this military industrial complex. We need to do something about China and all this other stuff. So I branched through these different groups, making friends along the way. And then when I started coming out about racial identity around 2016, 2017, I lost a lot of people, but I also didn't lose a lot of people because I didn't come out with, let's name the J and gas the queers. Like, I didn't come out with that kind of talk. I came out with what is up with this weaponized white guilt shit? We're a white country. Why is it bad to talk about that? That's what I started going on about. And so I lost a lot of people along the way, but the people I didn't lose, I still talk to today. And so I'm connected to a lot of different groups. And then when I started caring about racial identity and trying to dig into the reasons why, I started finding people like Millennial Woes and American Renaissance and Jason Kuna and Patriotic Alternative. And of course, I found a lot of let's call it the truth behind the truth sites, like Adam over at No More News. I started digging into things that have never been nice to talk about. I discovered an American hero, an inspiration of mine, George Lincoln Rockwell. Say what you want about the man. I know he played the optics game and lost. I get that. But he was a very inspiring figure to me. So
me too.
There was a lot of camps that I have visited in my coming to where I am now. And what I do through visiting these camps is I speak the truth as I know it, when I know it. And so when I discovered, oh my God, this is a huge lie about the, we're on YouTube, so the cost that is holy, we will say. When I started discovering so many lies and falsehoods around that narrative that was directly tied to the white guilt weaponization, wow, I wouldn't shut up about it. So I lost a lot of friends. And I had to learn the hard way. There are what Jason calls meme pathogens. It's a beautiful phrase. I used to call it the mind poison. The mind poison that exists in the people around me, it couldn't hear the truth. And I had to learn the hard way how powerful our enemies' lies were. And so then I had to say, okay, I can't just scream all the truth in the things I discover. I have to be careful about it. And this was about 2017, 2018. And that's when I decided I needed to make a public channel and start really getting my shit together and approaching this like an adult that was on a mission to get people to awaken, to get people to understand, and throw out a wide net to all of these groups, to all of these friends I still had, and see who I could pull along with me on our path to understanding and hopefully reclaiming our destiny of all the countries that we have. Because right now, let's be honest, none of our countries are really in control of them. None of the countries that we have right now that I can name have anybody in a leadership position that gives a one wet fart about the people of that country. They're all these internationalist folks. Most of them don't even have kids. They're all beholden to mega corporate, international corporate interests and all that. And if we're going to ever dislodge that, it has to start with some kind of holistic spiritual mental awakening in the sleeper populace. And not because I believe in some kind of populace uprising to fix this, I don't. But from a healthier populace will raise the brilliant men and the heroes and champions we will need to fix this mess in the future. And so that's why I want to bring as many people together, get my net of ideas and truth out to people using careful lexicon, careful phrasing, and finding out through interaction where someone is along the path to awakening that I was from my experience, and knowing what words to say to them and what content creators to give to them to help them along the pipeline to get to where we all need to be for some kind of beautiful Western sunrise. So perhaps I skipped over some of your question, but I think that's a good to unity and unification.
Really, really beautiful journey, actually. And I have to say that many of us are coming to that, we're converging to that same realization that, it has to start off kind of inside. I don't know if you want to say it's mental, emotional, spiritual, probably all three. But the idea of having a racial awakening, the problem is always, so we on the right always use logic, but most people don't seem to really listen, or they're so trapped within these mental cages of the propaganda that we live in that you have to find another way. And so the arts, obviously, the White Art Collective is a fantastic sort of bypass to that problem.
Yep. And that's why last year I changed gears with my major focus, and I moved to entertainment and simple, emotional, comedic engagement. And that's why I eventually developed what Dragons of Discord became, because I think that is the best way that I can engage people, new people, not people I already know and that are already here, but the best way that I can engage people and sort of wet their whistle and make them want to engage with me and learn from me more is having sort of a fun comedy variety show that just busts on Clown World, because anybody that finds me is already red-pilled enough to know that the media is full of shit. And when they get to me, they already know that. And I think that framework is what I should make my own of going forward, because no one else is doing exactly that. And I think that it's a really good niche for me, because I love to role play. I love to do voices. I love satire and mockery of idiots in charge. And that might be because I grew up watching Flying Circus, but so, but also at the same time, I like people to hear the truth, but just screaming about the truth and doing what 1,000 other content creators do with 1,000 times more followers than I do. I don't want to just be a repeat of that. Like, I don't need to dissect the news every day. I don't need to tell you what's wrong. I don't need to show you, torture porn of all of our people being just absolutely despicably treated terribly by our governments. There's enough of that out there. People are looking for a positive message. They're looking for something that doesn't make them want to eat their own gun. And I want to give that to them. And I also want to give them what they need, which is the truth and the mental weapons they need to fight in this mental war.
This is a perfect segue right into your show, Discordant Dragons. Could you give us the overview and maybe talk about a few episodes or some highlights?
Oh, certainly. The episodes are pretty much all the same. No reason to go into a particular episode. But here's the framework. It is, I pretend to be the ambassador to the Council of Worms for Planet Earth. And for those of you that are D&D nerds, you already know what the Council of Worms is. It's a box set that came out in the 1990s for second ed D&D, where it was about a big fantasy world where dragons and humans and elves and dwarves and such, they would have spiritual bonding, and it was fantasy dragons and D&D mixed into high fantasy civilization. It was a really, really cool setting. I liked it a lot in the 90s. And so I pretend that this world was approached by the Council of Worms because it's a powerful big world full of humans. And they nominated me as the spokesperson. And I assemble a party each week of truth warriors that can see through the lies and are the wise men of the era of this planet. Because each week there are 5 nominated members of the Council of Worms. They are each a different color of dragon. And they have a particular question or quandary about something going on in our world. And so each week I take 5 ridiculous pieces of clown world news, and I give it a punny title. Like, hold on, let me just pull open my folder and I'll read you some examples here. Okay.
So you're clearly a big D&D fan.
I'm a huge D&D nerd. Okay. I've been playing role-playing games since the 80s.
While you're looking that up, I'll just tell the audience they're very fun. It has almost a game show kind of energy to it, the way that you have questions, you lead people through. But of course, you talk about topical, political, social events, and you weave that in, and like your wit is just on fire. You're just on top of it the whole show. So this is the thing that we need, is more humor, you know. Yeah. And I think that's part of why it's so great to have you on the show and to kind of spread your message out, you know. But then also it creates a really wonderful piece of the mosaic of the entire Imperium art documentary, because we've had a lot of big brain people on here, and I can't say there's really a lot of people that have done much with humor, and that's just one of the best things. We talk about overcoming our differences, unifying people. For me personally, I use humor to disarm people all the time. I hang out with people across the entire spectrum in IRL, and immediately I joke, and they're laughing, and then they feel like, okay, they kind of put their guard down. We don't have to go through those political sort of filters, if you will. And if I trust somebody, I can share my thoughts with them and whatever. But anyway, if you want to continue with Discordant Dragons.
Oh, please! And I've got a good picture. If you can share it, it's already in the share here. If you can pop that open for us here. There we go. This is a good example. 2 weeks ago, I did a tinfoil episode. And so I got 5 different kinds of little tinfoil hats to put on my dragons for the week. And
a fedora as well. Lord Wolfshield would be proud.
Yes. I thought of him when I put that on the black dragon. I was like, you know what? I bet Lord Wolfshield would laugh at this one. But don't get me wrong. I know and I love the White Art Collective, but because of the times they stream and how late in the evening they do stuff, usually in the evenings I'm already done for the day because I get up before dawn. And on the weekends I do stuff with my family, and that's primarily when they do stuff. So I don't get to engage with them very often, sadly. But I do love them. But on this episode, I picked some really out there articles and some Q-tard stuff, and as you can see on screen, hands up, don't vax, NWO, not with a bang, but with a coof, snitches get riches, a strange Hillary to die on. So you can imagine the types of topics for this one. Yeah. And here's the thing: during the show, everybody who's quote unquote in the party. I love D&D dice, polyhedral dice. I have probably over 1,000 now. And everybody picks a number in the party, and I roll a die live on screen, or not on screen, live on stream, and to see who in the party gets to pick what topic we do. So it's a fun random game show element. And they pick a dragon, and I read the article or play the video, and then I have something well prepared for what the dragon has to say. And I save all of my notes for every show. So let me go ahead and pull it open. This is episode 15, the tinfoil episode. And while that opens and loads, I'll explain to you the framework of the show. At the end of the show, after we have answered all 5 dragons' quandaries, we get a reward from the Council of Worms, which comes in the form of treasure. And every week I have a new picture of a treasure hoard that I put up on screen. And the treasure is like the last 15 to 30 minutes of the show. I collect a bunch of current memes that have been made in just the last week. I either watch or read white pilling articles or videos just to give people some good news, just to give people something to smile about and feel uplifted by. And we always have a magic item. And the magic item each week is an old banned cartoon or a cartoon that makes leftists mad. So every week I play something like a banned World War II propaganda cartoon with a bunch of big buck-teethed, thick Coke bottle glass Japanese. Or I'll play, last week we played a compilation of Pepe Le Pew sexual assault just to trigger the shit libs. So I do stuff to cast a net that is very lowbrow, easy engagement stuff to keep people happy and laughing and engaged. But here's the smart thing. I bring people on that I hope will have smart things to say that will feed truth nuggets to people who need to hear it. And I'm very careful with who I pick for the show. I want disaffected liberals. I want people who are libertarians. I want people who are white identitarians. I want people who are MAGA crew. I want people who are NRX-based monarchy types. I get people that will come on and speak from a platform of somewhere along the pipeline who are aware of truths that I'm aware of. Every week, I want to have a mix of ideas. It's going to make some of my longtime viewers angry. Just last week, we had somebody really mad that I had a liberal guy on. And, he's someone I call a friend, but he believes in certain values and stuff that I don't share. But we still understand certain truths and we understand things, so we're not enemies. And I think that's an important thing for people to hear coming to my stream is, hey, this Yizz person, maybe if I came here from a disaffected liberal community, she's got somebody on here that is a Mises libertarian or somebody who's, who voted for Obama or something. Maybe I'm in the right place. Maybe I can hang around. And who knows? Maybe that person is going to be connected to some political office. Maybe that person works as a secretary at a corporation somewhere, and they hear me using the words like anti-white narrative and weaponized white guilt. And then that, because of my fun show and because of them staying and hanging around, because I have a liberal or a libertarian with me, that weapon, that mental aegis and gladius is now in that person, and they take it out into the world, into that avenue, into that ghetto, so to speak. So that's why I have the collected party that I try to build every week, because when Q stuff comes up, we all talk about, Q-tard nonsense. Or when something about white identity comes up, the people around me, they talk about their take on white identity and white guilt and that kind of stuff. So it's not a show where I preach just my message and my ideas. It's actually the opposite of that. It's for me to facilitate people that I vet and handpick to sort of broadcast out the various ideas and lexicon that I want to spread like leaven through bread into the populace of the West. And that's basically the whole show in a nutshell. So do you have any questions or anything you want to ask me specifically about it?
Well, I want to first share, and then I'll of course hand the mic to Nullis. I've been making headway into the anti-critical race theory world. That's an entire new sort of movement, and it's got quite a wide variety of people. Of course, people of color, and people who are sort of maybe classical liberals and the like, and a lot of them are still within the leftist matrix. Mm-hmm. They still have a subtle, tacit anti-white racism that they don't really know about because they're ignorant and brainwashed.
Yeah.
So I it's a little disingenuous, I suppose, but I go in there pretending to be one of them, bring links to American Renaissance or NoWhiteGuilt.org or this, that, and the other thing. And it's fascinating to see. It's almost like a social experiment where a lot of even people of color are like, yeah, right on, don't no white guilt. Yeah, don't be ashamed of yourself, etc. And
I actually had an Ashkenazi Jew reach out to me on Telegram yesterday and thank me for the way that I speak about delicate stuff and not automatically throwing them under the bus. And that was pretty cool.
Well, that's a whole new thing. I've actually encountered a few Jews that seem to be very genuine, and I find that's an area in my mind that I've yet to figure out, and so I have to kind of talk.
Yeah, he was an American nationalist, but he was of an entirely Jewish family. But they were Hasidic Jews that didn't like Zionism and didn't like the globalist stuff. And he messaged me and said that he appreciated me not associating all of them under one banner, and that made me feel good because that's been something that I've tried to go out of my way to not do.
Right. That this is a pretty huge tangent that would make a fantastic conversation, but I think we'll probably tuck it back in and focus.
Sure. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'm excited about that topic, but I'm just saying that I'm coming to a lot of the similar conclusions with you. Is that you can't go full both guns blazing into the no white guilt narrative. You have to kind of meet people where they are and then like slowly unfold it. But how about you, Nullis? What's your experience with this?
Well, this is an interesting topic. When you have conversations with people of different beliefs and ideas, especially in a real life situation, I believe that. Well, before we start anything, I'm a firm believer in whatever you say online is something that you should be able to say in person.
Yes.
So if you have strong opinions in person and you have strong opinions in in your online personality or whatever, then I can respect that. What I don't like is when somebody has very strong opinions, on the in the chat room, and then if you ever meet them in person, they're very quiet and they don't want to say anything. Mm-hmm. Be who you are. Always be unapologetic about what you believe in and who you are. I think that's where it starts with everything. I think that the biggest problem that we see today is a lot of people apologizing for their opinions, and I don't think that should be the case, especially people in our community. It seems almost like we have to explain ourselves to other people. No, this is who we are, and either you accept it or you don't accept it. And that reminds me I think, maybe about a year ago, I think, Donald, we had an Imperium Art episode with John from Lilu and John, and he called me an elitist snob. And I, I kind of like cringed at it because I don't like being called a snob, but I understood what he meant by that because he did say it in a very, very nice way, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, So what I mean by that is that we have to have a certain level of standard in what we represent, at least personally, I believe. And I can't speak for everyone else, but I think that we need to have a certain level of exclusivity in the sense that we represent something very specific, and that we represent certain values, and we represent certain goals, and we represent certain cultures and what have you. So it's not like, where we, my concern with this in many ways, because we have this conversation constantly, and I respect it and appreciate the conversation, but I believe that a lot of times what people do is they kind of compromise their own values to try to get a bigger audience. I'm not saying you're doing that, Yizz, by the way. Don't misunderstand me. But I see this more as a general issue, and I kind of don't think that's the good approach. I think my philosophy is always be on message, stay on message, and if your message is good, it's like that forget what movie was that from, but build it and they will come, right? So you basically you have to stay on message, build your message, and people will gravitate toward that message. For us to constantly have to find ways to explain ourselves to everyone, I think is also, it gets very tiresome after a while. But the other issue is that you're also not giving the other people an opportunity for them to realize the error of their ways. Mm-hmm. So if I'm looking at someone who has let's just say a very liberal mindset, or progressive mindset. Again, these terms and words are constantly being twisted and turned. And so, but right now in the current context, what they mean by progressive, I call them commies, but what I'm saying is that, people who have this mentality, if you're going to kind of soften your message to appeal to them, then you're also doing them a disservice, because you're not giving them an opportunity to come to the realization of what they're doing wrong.
Exactly. There's speaking exactly to that, around New Year's, or maybe January, I forget, but when it was really cold early this year, I made a video. I do a morning walk series. I don't know if you know that or not, but one of the primary things on my channel is I do a morning walk capture, usually once, sometimes twice a week, where I speak my mind and I just talk about whatever's on my mind as I take a morning walk through the beautiful area I live in. And I was really fired up. This was right around the we're on YouTube, the big erection of the November election cycle. And so I was really fired up. I was angry at a lot of things, and there were people in my cluster that were pissed off. Their tempers were high because of what was going on in January, and there was a lot of conflict. And I was mad because not only was I wanting to backslide and say ugly things, there were people around me wanting to do that too. People wanting to play the villain, people wanting to, pick up a rifle and go die like an idiot. There was a lot of that talk around me and pressure around me. And so I made this video that I just linked in the chat. And it's called The Fire of Prometheus, because it was my belief in the lexicon and practices of Jason's Go Free manual that kept me from being a retard. And when I mean that, I mean going to the January 6th protest, and it kept me from going there. And so I was inspired to make a video about it. And what you just brought up about chasing people away, if you watch that video, towards the end of it, in my big rant, it's one of my barefoot walks in the snow. I like taking off as many clothes as I can and letting the elements just infuse me. I like if there was a modern day druid, I would be a druid. Like that's my favorite class. And I like being infused by the power, by the raw energy of nature when I talk. So I had my shoes off. I was wearing almost no clothes, and it was like 5 degrees below freezing, and it was a great time. And at the end of that video, I went on a rant about, don't say this, don't say that, don't call them the F word, don't call them the J's, don't call them A, B, C, D, and E, don't call them a libtard or a shitlib or any of these other words. You call them anti-white. You use the word anti-white. And why do you do that? Because you're not attacking what they are. You're not calling them the F word if they're a gay guy. You're not calling them a scheming merchant if they're a J. You call them by their actions, because people can change that. Because when you say you're being anti-white, you're being an anti-white jackal, that's anti-whiteism, and I'm not going to stand for it. You can say, you can change your ways, though. Take my hand, sister. Yeah. Take my hand, brother. There's redemption.
Yeah.
But if what you've done is say, I hate you because of how you were born, there's no redemption there. You have made that person forever an enemy with no chance of healing that wound. Mm-hmm. And so that's why this lexicon is so powerful. And if you really embrace it and live it like I do, and you take it into the battlefield with you, it works. And I've seen it work. Like I talked about that Ashkenazi person messaging me. There's a black lady that likes me at church and likes the shit I talk about at my mother's church. There are people of all different stripes around the internet that come to me and talk to me about news, about the coof, about anti-whiteism. And they wouldn't do that if I was saying the N-word and the F-word and talking about the J's and trying to play pin the tail on the donkey with whatever ethnic group is the bad guy this week. Like, I don't do that. And by not doing that, it lets people have the ability to talk to me and explore arcs of redemption and connection that would otherwise be sealed off if I played the villain. And that's why I think that this Go Free lexicon stuff and the practices I've developed from learning from Jason's book, that's why I think it's so great, and that's why I promote it so much.
This is beautiful. I think one of the key takeaways here that our whole audience needs to really, really meditate on is the point you made about not attacking people for what they were born as, but rather for their actions, and that it's transformative in this regard. Now, we live in a kind of a mental race war, if you will, in terms of,
yes,
this camp versus that camp, this color versus that color, et cetera, this ideology, et cetera. And I think that, again, it's amazing how words, lexicons, dialectic, that seems to be one of our greatest weapons as far as and when I say weapons, I mean weapons of peace, that we should overcome the problems, that we should liberate the minds of our enemies to make them realize this. I've talked to many, many people of color who are strong supporters of white identity politics, in the sense that they recognize we created Western civilization. If you get rid of all the Tibetans, Tibetan culture goes with them. Same for whites, et cetera, et cetera. So, it gives them a sense of connection to this. And, I know that this stuff is still very fuzzy around the edges, and there's a lot of disagreement about it, but I think that you're headed on a really positive trajectory with this.
I hope so.
It's really good. Do you feel like you've had a lot of success with this?
Well, it depends on how you measure success. I stay wound up and I stay stressed, but I've kind of always been wound up and stressed. But now I feel like I'm actually making a difference. I feel like in the last few years, especially with the Go Free weapons, with that mental Aegis and Gladius, I feel like talking to people like you, learning from people who are from the old guard white identity crew, people like everybody from Jared Taylor to I don't know, anybody like George Lincoln Rockwell, people that come from an antique nationalist background, the National Socialist crew. I got sympathies with some of the things those guys talk about. I feel like I've adapted a lot of the positivity and the truth that I feel from all the different camps, from all the different ideologies, and I package that into layman terms and simple ideas and emotional, packets or memes that I can put into others who come and hang out with me and talk to me and watch movies with me and come to my Discordant Dragon stream. I share those ideas to be biblical, like a disciple of Jesus might do if you're hanging out with the whores. You might not preach directly at them, but the things you say subtly might get them to change their ways eventually. And I think that is where my success lies for me, is I see the power I have in spreading not only positivity, but basic awareness and truth about race and IQ and genetics and religion and all these things that have been beaten out of us for generations as white people in the West that we're not allowed to think about or care about. I think that I'm lighting those fires again in people in healthy, holistic ways. And to me, that's really the only success I get out of this, because I make almost no money doing this, and it takes like 40 or 50 hours of my week.
Right.
And on top of that, it cost me a lot of time with my husband and my family.
Mm.
And so there's a trade-off, but I do feel like I should be doing this because I don't want to just focus on me and my loved ones and do nothing when I feel like the Leviathan's going to swallow us all. Like, I don't want to be in my beautiful Appalachian home 30 years from now and the anti-white military coming to bulldoze my home and kill me and be looking out the window waiting for that to kill me and say, maybe if I would have just said something, maybe if I would have just.
Right.
I don't want that to be my last thought. You know what I mean?
I could not agree more. I'm precisely at that place.
Okay.
The walls seem to be closing in very fast right now. But I think this is a really good time to segue into the Imperium art essay. So Nullis has written a really, really brilliant essay that we, of course, ask all of our guests to read and respond to. I understand you have maybe a few notes or a few.
I certainly did,
Okay.
and I loved what you wrote. By the way, it's a beautiful essay. Is it just you that made that, or did you and Nullis both work on that?
Well, he deserves all the credit. He's the big brain here. I'm just
okay. Well, Nullis,
Thank
you
you.
did a fantastic job. I loved the document. I have untreated ADHD. It's really hard for me to read long form intelligent content. That's why I have to absorb books through audio form. But I buckled down and I made myself read the whole thing, and it was very well done. I loved it.
Oh, speaking of which, I intend to read the essay and post it on my site, on my YouTube page, just so everyone knows.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. That's great. Let me see. Let me get my notes open here, or scroll down to my notes. It's already open. Let's see. On page 5, it said the goal is to provide proper context within the framework of the things that we create and talk about. Western biospirit as it relates to ongoing evolution of European culture. That's my note to talk about first. I think that the term biospirit is excellent. I use it a lot because there's more to us than just meat. There's more to us than just thought.
Yeah.
There's some kind of meaning that exists with the pairing of the physical world and the hypothetical world that we can think of and the spiritual world that we dream of. There's something more there. And a good singular word that's both scientific and metaphysical is biospirit. I love that word. And that's why I think that the goal to provide proper context of the creations of our biospirit and the necessity of keeping that biospirit healthy is a very important thing. And we need to provide the context of that through the White Art Collective, through Dragons of Discord, through Jared George's music, through Jason Kuna's preaching. There are many avenues of information and celebration that we can use to provide the proper context for our people across the world to healthily engage in that biospiritual expression. And that was that's what I got from page 5.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to continue? Or do you want to stop?
Yes, no, by all means, continue. Yeah.
All right. Okay, my next note here is page 6, immorality and nihilism being at the core of problems. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have listened to the interviews that I've done on Jason's channel, but and actually I brought this up on Learning in Public with Jared and John on his channel as well. I talk about the force of nihil, the great nothing, the entropic Leviathan. And earlier in the conversation, I talked about the Leviathan that threatens to swallow us all. The metaphor that I use for that comes from the word for nothingness, which is nihil. I think it's Greek, but it could also be Roman. I'm not sure. But when I read that immorality and nihilism on page 6 being at the core of problems, it really spoke to me because I've been saying the same thing for 10 or 15 years before I even knew what to call it. And the word that I've developed is like I said, nihil, the great nihil. Because when you look at the pornography being pumped into our minds, when you look at the drugs, both the street drugs and the legal ones are worse, by the way, in my opinion, for what they do. And then you look at all of the mind poison. Like, hey, do you like anime? Then watch anime and do nothing else. Hey, do you like racing? Then watch racing and care about nothing else. Hey, do you like tennis or sport ball or whatever else? Our hedonistic, heartless, soulless Leviathan says, I'm going to exploit your hedonistic base lusts until there's nothing else in your mind but that, and then you are spiritually destroyed, and that means reduced to zero, brought to the heel of nihil. And I think that really speaks to a truth that I discovered on my own that I've been talking about for a long time. So that really meant a lot to me on page 6.
Yeah, and this actually ties in with our conversation earlier about redemption and also about making no excuses for any kind of immorality. And I think that these are both very important aspects of combating nihilism.
I have to interject. I think the name The Great Nihil sounds like it would make an excellent demon in one of your games or something. You know?
I actually used that as an epithet for one of the characters of Entropic Darkness. In one of my D&D Cosmos games, she is a lawful neutral figurehead that took over the mantle of Weejoss, the god of death and magic. Her name is Shafira. And the Great Nihil and the seat of entropy is what she occupies in the deep bowels of what's the Ossus. Ossus, that's the name of the D&D plane where she resides.
I want to strongly urge you to get in touch with Dave Martell. He's creating his own
he's the Garage Party, that guy.
Yeah, he's creating his own role-playing game, and he just put out a book called The Bizarchives, Tales of Monsters and Machines and etc. And
that sounds right up my alley.
Right, like short stories of science fiction. I did the cover art for it. So you two are kind of cut from the same cloth as far as your love of fantasy. And
definitely sounds like it. Yeah.
I think you two together would be explosive.
Cool. Maybe we could even do some kind of creative project together with the White Art Collective. Like maybe some kind of
I'd be all on board on that for sure. And we'll have Knowledge narrate it with his deep voice.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah. And also we have a lot of really fun high, like if you're going to put stats on it, really high in the wits characteristic. We have a lot of high wits people involved in the White Art Collective, and those people are great for role-playing games. And so maybe in the future, he or I or all of us together could create some kind of fun role-playing setting, and maybe once a month or twice a month or whatever, we do some kind of White Art Collective D&D game or science fiction role-playing game or something like that.
A stream of some kind, yeah.
Is Lord Wolfshield's wizard named the Great Fedora?
That's the source of his power now.
It's actually his headband of intellect +6. That's what his score is.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know if he's watching this show, but anyway, the spirit is floating among us right now. Anyway, I'm sorry to continue with your points then.
I have at least one more. Hold on, just a second. I had it minimized. At the end of page 6 and the start of page 7, I like what the essay says about the nation state being something neither that the collective nor the individual can define. It's an organic expression of ethnos, mythos, and logos, and evolving along a path. I feel the truth of that on page 7, where it talks about organic nationalism. That resonates with me because I know it's true. Because when I look at everything from the rise of Julius Caesar to the thing that we're not allowed to talk about that happened in the 1930s, all of the things that I see, no one, no matter what anyone says, was a Bond villain sitting at a table twirling a mustache, making it all happen on purpose. Everything was guided by men who had will to power, and then things occurred organically around people trying to make things manifest. And I think that no one who says, I have this exact plan, and if we do this, it's going to come out this way, those people are deluded. Like, no matter how much power you have or how much money you have, the human condition is dynamic. Like, we are beings of entropy and dynamism. We aren't static beings. We're not integers in a computer program.
Exactly.
You can't account for all of that. So the best thing that we can do is speak the truth the best that we know it, and encourage those around us to care about something that isn't just materialistic hedonism. That keeps them out of the mouth of the great worm, out of the mouth of Nihil. And that's why I think I don't profess that, Mises libertarianism is the key to success, or National Socialism is the key to success. I don't say any of that because I don't know that to be true. I can't know that to be true. So what I say is, look, I've studied Marxism. I've studied Marxist communism. I've studied fascism, National Socialism, classic liberalism. I've studied all of these things, and I think there are good and bad in all of them, and there were successful men and evil men in all of them. And we need to analyze that, take the truth and the righteousness from it, and apply that going forward to build whatever comes next. I don't think any of those things I mentioned are ever going to exist again. Whatever comes next for us is what we build, what the children we raise to be champions will build from the ashes of this civilization. And that's what we need to focus on, is that truth, that organic nationalism.
Yeah, and I think that I should say that I approach pretty much everything from a nationalist point of view. My premise essentially is that identity will trump ideology, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need ideology. And that also, of course, doesn't mean that you don't need a state structure. I'm not, I'm not an anarchist by any stretch of the imagination. I'm quite the opposite. But what I am saying here is similar to what you're saying. But what I'm also saying here is that my identity is derived from my organic ethnos. It's derived from my metaphysical reality. In my case, for me, it's my Catholicism is represented. My metaphysical reality is represented by my Catholicism. So these are all my expressions of my organic identity. My Hungarian heritage is an expression of my organic identity.
I have appreciation of Catholicism because my mother's current husband, the one that she'll likely have the rest of her life, his family's Lutheran. And through them, I learned of catechisms and things like that, which led me to want to study Catholicism. And I think Catholicism is beautiful. I love it. Like all religions, of course, you can say negative things about it. But I like to love things for the good while just learning and recognizing the bad, but not damning the whole thing for it. So I think there's a lot of beauty in Catholicism.
Yeah, I mean, I thank you, and I think that it's worth it for everyone to at least explore the teachings of Catholicism, because it was a dominant element of the European mindset and spirit, and or the European biospirit, if you will, for centuries. And I think that it was a strong part of the development of the European man as well. Even to this day, you see this in everything that we build and do. It's foundationally there, even if people don't believe in it or follow it. But what I wanted to,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I meant to mention this earlier. One of my followers, who I'm going to be doing a stream with either tomorrow or next Friday, depending on my schedule, Violence is Life. She said that the name for the force of nature in old European or paganism or Asatru is Genungagap, the hungry force of nature. That would be another decent thing to talk about, the force of entropy as a natural thing.
Yeah, I mean, and again, right, there is an element to this as well, of course, if you look at it. And I write about this actually in the essay toward the end about the balance of the warrior poet, where you have the expression of violence and embracing the full emotional spectrum. But before I get to that part, what I really wanted to say here was that at the same time, I do believe that there are teachings, there are ideas, and there are ideologies that are beyond toxic but evil.
Yes.
And so while I strongly believe in not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, I mean, I'm, for example, not a big fan of liberalism. Even classic liberalism is not really my cup of tea.
Mine either. But it is the camp I come from, so I can't get that off.
No, I'm not. Yeah, but I also acknowledge that there's also been a lot of great things that were created during this era. So what I'm trying to say is I generally try not to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but everything being equal, I do believe that there are. If you believe in absolute good, which I do, then there is absolute evil, and the absolute evil is represented by certain thoughts and ideologies.
And so you can hear it and see its face every time you see Bill Gates.
Right. I mean, yeah. And like, we can go into what those ideologies are, but I think the more important point is that if you follow a moral path, a righteous path, if you follow a path, or at least you try to, and then you will recognize it. I think that you will recognize evil for what it is, and not for what they tell you that it is. Because a lot of times what they tell you is evil is probably not the evil that you should be watching out for.
I got exactly like that. And this is an unpopular thing for some people to hear, but there are completely evil men that wear the vestments, and there were completely good men that wore the swastika. And I know that's a very uncomfortable thing for some people to hear, but it's a truth nonetheless.
Right. You had people. Right. I mean, for example, you could say that, and again, I'm not even looking at the individuals. I'm looking more at the ideology aspect of it. So an ideology could be born from evil. Communism, any kind of Marxism, in my view, is born out of evil.
I definitely agree with that statement. Yes, definitely.
So that to me, for example, is the anti-logos, if you want to use this term, but you could use many different terms. You can use the Antichrist term, any way you want to look at it, whichever way you want to look at it is fine.
I also on the other end of that spectrum, of the Marxist spectrum, the transcendent transhumanism, I also think that is born of evil. That doesn't mean that I think those people are evil. I think that it is an ideology of lies, because to transcend humanity is to destroy humanity, which is an ultimate evil. And I think that is born of nihil. So even though I don't think those people, the crystal wavers and the transcendent folks, I don't think that they're like, they're not like Chairman Mao. But I still think that is an ideology or a religion, so to speak, born of the same evil we're talking about.
Right. Well, I mean, you also have to we have to recognize that there are a lot of misguided people, and that's the goal of an evil ideology or an evil thought process, that it tries to appeal to a larger audience by promising things that it never delivers, and so you have this constant yearning for all this all these empty promises. And then you're given scraps, and then you're desiring even more. It's almost like a drug for them.
Yes.
But and it's a cult in a way as well. So what we have to recognize is the evil aspect of the idea, and then our goal has to be to try to help the individuals that are misled by it to recognize the evil in it, and bring them back and bring them to the light, if you will. And that ties into religion, it ties into identity, it ties into your nationality, it ties into your racial awareness, it ties into your cultural awareness. All of this is connected. And you can't take one out and replace it with something else, because they're all connected to each other.
Yeah. A car won't work so good if you take out the alternator and take one of the tires off.
Exactly. There you go.
Oh, that's the problem with my car.
That's why my motorboat doesn't work. I don't have a propeller.
Let me jump in real fast, because I want to do a quick plug for my afternoon in the museum show. Nullis and Tyler Hamilton are going to be joining me to look at Catholic art. So it's obviously a giant topic that couldn't be covered in an hour, but I think with Tyler Hamilton is specifically really knowledgeable about Catholicism, history, these various things. I obviously am an art teacher, and I can talk about painting and the like. So I think between the three of us, it's going to be a really enjoyable show. So
I'll definitely make sure to if I can't do it live, I'll definitely at least watch and listen. But is it on Monday night, or when
I'm shooting for Mondays. I haven't. I'm kind of like building my schedule right now, but I just figured since we were talking about that, it'd be nice to just let the people in the chat know it's.
Yeah, Monday's my heavy day, because that's when I do all my prep for Discordant Dragons, because it's Monday nights at 6.
Mm-hmm.
So I typically don't do Monday stuff much, but if it's a stream on Monday, I can listen to it while I work. So I might do that.
All right.
There you go. I'm basically in it for the fun.
That's cool. Hey, having fun's important.
No, I'm just kidding.
I'm
just kidding.
Yeah, and he's the guy that brings the good jokes and stuff. So we're good. Yeah.
I'll be the humor. What is that? What do they call that? Never mind. I just wanted to just mention something, is that you talked about embracing the violent nature of our being, right? So in the essay, I have the section called the Dialectics of Artistic Violence.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I really try to focus on balancing. Well, first of all, we have to embrace our full emotional spectrum. If we're artists, if we're content creators of any kind, I believe, we have to be able to acknowledge and realize that there is rage in us. There is anger in us. There is a violent, there's sometimes a violent expression manifesting in us, and we have to recognize this, and we have to face it. And at the same time, we also have to balance it with a morality, with we have to temper it with discipline. You don't want to become the very people that that are attacking us. You don't want to be the monster you're trying to conquer, right?
Right.
And so that's really where this is an important aspect. But that doesn't mean that you don't recognize it and you don't express it. You need to express it, I think.
Yeah, I think you need to as well. And that brings me to the last note that I had on the essay.
Mhm.
Is when reading the end of the essay, I was inspired by talking about artwork, positive propaganda, and promoting ideas that combat subversion and degeneracy.
Mhm.
And like we talked about earlier, my manifestation of that that I want to contribute to everything is Discordant Dragons, and just doing what I do with regular communication and the social networking that I do across all the different, like Gilded and Discord and Telegram and all the other social media I use. I think that is my gift. My gift and talent is being intersex, being in between genders, being in between the sexes, being in between political camps my whole life. It has forced me to think about why people believe in, identify, and behave the way they do.
Mhm.
And since I had really good upbringing, really good training, it prepared me to be able to use those natural gifts and talents I've developed along the way to know how to reach people and know where they are and know what I can tell them. And that's why I think propaganda is not a negative word. It's a neutral word. And propaganda is just, artwork or songs or whatever that has a message. And that can be a very positive thing, like making a song about loving God and loving your family. Like, that's positive propaganda for loving God and family. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
And I think that is how we fight in this spiritual mental war. That is the quote unquote violence we need to be doing to our enemies, so to speak. Because I don't think, I've listened to most of the Siege on audiobook. I am a pupil of Uncle Ted. Like, I understand people that wanted to do violence and seek physical violence as a means to make what we want manifest, and it has failed miserably. And that's why I think we need to take the war, take the combat, inspire that warrior spirit to fight on the new battlefield, which is the battlefield of ideas, the battlefield for the spirit of the West. That's where we need to fight now. That's where we need to guide our young men that will become the warriors. We need to cultivate them to fight in that war.
Just last night, I had on a friend, goes by the name GC. He has a military background. It's part 2 of a series on 4th generation warfare. And that is literally it. It's not, in the fields with guns and tanks and all that. It's psychological warfare, cultural warfare, linguistic warfare. But I mean, there's economics and systems and all kinds of strategy involved in it that the left is masterful at. And so this is a discussion. At the end of the discussion, we essentially were talking about, the takeaway is to build communities and to cultivate leaders. So those are sort of 2 goals that we must focus on. Develop leaders. And this might involve creating, books or courses or something or other that can kind of get our leaders on the same page. A lot of the things that you talk about, Yizz, the dialectics you use, you're very, very, very good at that. And of course, Jason Kuna is quite excellent at that. But there's a lot of other thinkers and influencers as well in our sphere. So it would be very interesting to somehow pull together, some kind of I guess, an instruction manual for leaders now and in the future, something I could teach my son, for example.
Absolutely.
And then these leaders go out and lead and create small to medium to large communities. And then because, we're not living in the 1930s anymore,
Right. Things are different.
radically different. And so we have to have completely new tools, so.
I would just add to this, though, that I think that it is important that we support. First of all, everyone fills a certain role based on their personal background, their experience, their expertise, their passions, and so on. And I think that it's very important that we understand our roles in what it is that we're doing generally. For example, for one, believe that if someone, is going on the street to protest, protesting, there's nothing wrong with that. Go out, do it. You don't have to be violent to protest. You don't have to go nuts and but to go out and present yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that we have to show ourselves. We have to present ourselves wherever we can. I'm not saying that's the only way, but I believe that that, you know, there are many different ways of expressing this. Some people are better at, you know, going on, holding that placard on the street and just walking up and down and doing that. And so, but then we need to support them in that. And yes, they might be demonized, but that doesn't mean that they're evil. And so I think that we need to, you know, recognize that, you know, if you look back in history, our greatest heroes were the ones who stood up and made a stand. Now, I'm not saying that we're living in those times right now, or I'm not saying that, you know, it's going to happen, or I'm not advocating for any of that. But there might be a time in history where we will be able, or where we will be forced to do this, right? Yeah. And so we have to be very careful about recognizing these roles, supporting each other, understanding what our place is in this whole thing, and really, you know, looking at this as a brotherhood, you know, in terms of what everyone brings to the table.
I think that when it comes to what you can bring to the table, that's another thing that using lexicon correctly and applying ethics and morals correctly will do. Just like we talked about earlier with offering people your hand and not damning them for how they were born or whatever. We are going to need all hands on deck. And the more that we reach out and get people engaged and active, the more that they're going to learn to love themselves, love their people, love their kin, and have an actual positive spark in them. And we're going to need that to make it through the storm that's coming. Well, and I think that's very important.
Yeah.
That's the reason I'm saying this, is because I come from a tradition, the Hungarian tradition, where, you know, where there was a Hungarian Revolution in 1956 against the communists.
Yeah.
People stood up, they grabbed a gun, and they fought the commies. If you go back even further, you know, into the early 20s, you know, and after the First World War, you know, there's a tradition of this, and I am very proud to be a part of that tradition, in the sense of that being my heritage, right? And so for me, you know, I think that's an important thing. That's not to suggest that we need to do these things today or what have you, but we have to understand that, and this is really what I'm trying to get at, is that those people that attacked my ancestors, my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, right? Those same people are attacking us today. And
yes.
and if anyone thinks that they're going to just, you know, stop, these people are relentless. Yeah. They will not stop, and they are very violent. Yes. So we have to recognize this reality. And you know, we can't just say, oh, well, you know, well, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to, and don't misunderstand me. I'm a very strong advocate for a peaceful way to do it. I'm a strong advocate for appealing to the general public in a very nice way to really bring them over. I'm a strong advocate for building communities. But if anyone believes for a second that those people, that they will change, that's not going to happen. These people are relentless, and they will not stop until they destroy us. And I'm saying this. So this is something that we have to recognize.
Indeed, that's a beautiful thing.
I completely agree. Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself.
I'm sorry. There's a connection between all these things, because we, you know, I'm just trying to pull it together. So people will not defend themselves if they don't know who they are or love themselves. You know, that's what we're fighting here is this anti-white racism and the ethnomasochism that whites have against themselves. So, you know, without the will to fight, we've already lost. So, you know, that's what we're kind of doing here in the internet sphere, in the cultural sphere. And we pray that we won't have to pick up a gun. That's a whole other topic. But I think it's, what do they say? By your side. Yeah. Like, what is it? What is it? Like, prepare for the worst and pray for the best, or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, prepare for the worst, but hope for the best, or pray for the best. That's what we should all do. So
let's have a balance between those two things. You know, earlier we were talking about martial arts. I'm a super strong advocate for martial arts. So every single person in our sphere should have, you know, a gun and know martial arts and be a law-abiding citizen.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, be, you know, a sort of a self-embodied warrior in our own way.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
a scholar warrior, if you will.
Especially men, but I think women should at least know the basics of self-defense and home defense with basic weaponry.
1,000% on that one. Yeah, yeah. Well,
because it ain't just the white men they're going to stop with.
No, I mean, if not, maybe they need to know more so. But are there any closing thoughts on the essay then, or?
No, not on the essay. That was my final thing. That's what I had on all of it. Just off the cuff here, it's a wonderful essay. I shared it in chat already. I shared the link, and I encourage everyone to read it. It's a beautiful essay, and it says a lot. It speaks a lot of truth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Beautiful. Well, it has been absolutely fabulous having you on. You are a fountain of wisdom and energy and joy and inspiration. We're very blessed to have you in our sphere. And so I'm looking forward to a future of just more growth and great content. We urge everybody to check out the link tree that I'll be posting below and to share this video. Everybody who is watching this has a responsibility to be a part of this community. We can't do it alone. You guys have the numbers. Let's get the message out. Let's engage our own networks, everybody's different networks, and bring this community together, grow stronger, etc. So,
amen, brother.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. And again, thanks again to Nullis as well for the amazing essay. Highly recommend that you go to abnormocracy.com. It's on the screen. Please share your thoughts on the essay. Share it again with others. We'd love to get this essay more into academic realms as well. It would be exciting.
Tear it apart, you know?
Yeah, we've always invited critique on this show, and we're adults. We're able to handle that. We're not made out of eggshells. And so once again, thank you to Nullis for his incredible insights and everything that he has to add. So God bless you all. We love you dearly. Go and be free. Have a wonderful night.